Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm here to tell you about all of my incredible experiences at ComicCon 2024. I hope you'll forgive my voice as it's still recovering from all of the loud talking that I've had to do over the past 2 days. Hopefully you'll be able to tell that I had an amazing time regardless of how quiet I sound. So for those of you that didn't watch my ComicCon video last year, ComicCon is an abbreviation of Comic Book Convention, and the idea is that various artists and comic book writers will come and they will sell their wares at various booths, which had really beautiful artwork. And there will also be a lot of people there dressed in costumes. You'll see plenty of those throughout this video. If I don't talk long enough to show all of them, I will put audio tracks in because it is so amazing to see all of the amazing work that goes into each and every one of these costumes. Now, I'm not going to show you every picture that I took, as some of you have expressed concerns about your versions of modesty, and also I wanted to show a bit of my biases because I wanted to specifically handpick the pictures that were based on characters from games I liked. So for the end of the year, I'll put a couple more from games that I didn't like that were just simply cool. Most of these pictures speak for themselves, but I think the ones that I was the most excited about were all of the girls dressed up as Zelda from Tears of the Kingdom. That was the one costume I was hoping to see because Tears of the Kingdom is my favorite video game, and I ended up seeing 3. And I think the Zelda characters were generally the nicest. All of the girls that were dressed up as Zelda, they were the ones that were really passionate about the Zelda series, and some of them would explain their reasoning for why each game was their favorite. I mean, pretty much all of them were friendly. Some were more shy than others, but I didn't have a single person refuse me an opportunity to get a picture with them. So overall, I loved being able to see all these people's creativity all over their body, literally wearing their hearts on their sleeves. I loved being able to see all of the artwork. I got to purchase a Mario-themed pillowcase and also a poster of various Mario characters. In addition to cosplays, there are also quite a lot of celebrity guests that show up. And I met all of the actors that I had on my list except for 3. So I am going to describe them for the most part in the order that I saw them while saving the best 2 for last. So the first actress we saw was Christina Vee, sometimes known as Christina Valenzuela. I knew her as the voice of Tulin in Tears of the Kingdom. They blend together a lot. As well as quite a few Fire Emblem characters, including Marin in Fire Emblem Engage, and almost Edelgard, before they replaced her with Terra Platt. What was great about Christina was that the profile picture that she gave on Comic-Con's website made her look like she was really serious and kind of grumpy, but she couldn't be further from that when we met her. She had this really enthusiastic voice, like she was really excited to see us, but when she saw Megan dressed up as Kaz from Skull and Bones and carrying the goat, she took the goat, she said, "Oh, this is so cute!" and kept like gesturing with the goat's arms whenever she talked to make her look even more animated. Now, Megan had no idea who Christina was because she's not a gamer. But at the same time, she was still so impressed by how much she loved the goat that ended up being one of the highlights of all of the celebrities that she met. Next, we met Ian Sinclair. I knew him as the voice of Bunei and Berkut from the Fire Emblem series, as well as, can't pronounce the name, but someone in the Danganronpa 3 anime. And he came across as though he could probably be misconstrued for being autistic, but I think he was probably just an extremely excitable guy that could find the slightest thing exciting. He was constantly changing the subject and pointing to random things and coming to different conclusions about whatever it was he was talking about. One of the earliest examples I saw was myself, Teresa, and Megan, the 2 friends that I came with. There was only one person ahead of us in line, but that person was taking a while to get his wallet out to purchase some souvenirs and autograph material. And he was talking to us while we were still only second in line, and one of the things he was saying was that he was looking through the booklet of all of the celebrities that were going to be at Comic-Con, and when he saw Jen Taylor, he was like, "No way, they got the voice of Cortana from Halo?" And I said, "Not only that, but she also voiced Peach and Toad." And he's like, "Whoa, I didn't know that. Now I kind of want to meet her, but I can't because I'm going to act too much like a fanboy." There was one time where he remembered that he was able to sit down because he was just so excited to be able to walk up and down I think there was one time where he was like saying, well, because I'm a voice actor, people don't recognize me by my face, but I probably would have geeked out if I was around too many of the actors. And he just sounded like he was more excited to meet people than the people were to meet him. So when it was finally time for us to talk to him, he seemed like he was really, really energetic and wanted to come up with some kind of either funny or humble or both type of comments. So for example, when I tried to shake his hand, he like swung for it like it was a baseball bat, and he said, "Wow, dude, you got a nice handshake." Haven't heard that in a while, but that was a really random comment. I told him that he did a great job as Berkut, and I said that a lot of people said that he should have gotten an Emmy or an Oscar or whatever the proper term is, and instead of acting like, oh yeah, that was great of me, instead he said, it all comes down to good voice direction and if you're able to follow it. So then I said, when you played Berkut, did your throat get hurt from a lot of screaming? And he's like, Berkut's a really noble guy. But he said, there are some other animes I've been in where I've screamed far worse. So he said, Fire Emblem was pretty easy in that department. He pointed to the picture behind him and he's just said, that picture doesn't have enough gray in it. That's not exactly what he said, but he was making a joke about how he's starting to get gray in his hair and beard, and he looks predominantly brown in the picture. So he was noticing even that. It seemed like sometimes he would just get this far off look in his eyes, like he just had a new idea. He seemed like he was like a more ethereal, idealistic extrovert, and I really appreciated that a lot, especially as Berkut is quite the noble, and it just comes across as way more silly and relaxed than Berkut comes across. Oh, and he also mentioned he played Bune in Fire Emblem Engage, and when I found that out, I said, oh, I'm sorry that I didn't put him in my party too much, and he's like, I don't blame you, he would want to lick everything. To give you context, Bune is a chef, so he's constantly thinking about new food ideas. But sometimes he goes a bit too far and takes something that shouldn't be eaten and wants to think of how he can make it into a recipe. Then we met DeLisle-Griffin, or Grey Griffin if you don't want to be politically correct. I knew her as the voice of Daphne in some of the Scooby-Doo movies, including Scooby-Doo in the Cyber Chase and Scooby-Doo in the Vampire's Curse. And she was also in What's New Scooby-Doo. And she was by far the most extroverted and enthusiastic person, not only out of all the guests, but probably at the entire convention. Because she was standing in front of her table, not behind it like every other guest has done, and she gave every single person that passed by a hug. She had this very bouncy energy to her, like the expression, you have balls on your feet, because it seemed like she was always so excited, and she quoted lines from her movies even if people didn't ask her to. She did for me as well. And she seemed like she was this extremely excitable person, like very high energy, loved the fact that we loved her movies. I said, were you aware that the creepy thingy line would become a meme? And she's like, no, is it? I said, it probably is, given the internet culture. So then I said, is it true that you filmed all of the scenes with the Mystery Inc. gang together? And she's like, yeah, me and Frank Welker were next to each other. She said, Frank Welker's so cool that I sometimes still even text him today. So then she gave us another hug, as if the first one wasn't enough, and then continued to do that for the rest of the line. Not like we were looking, but she was doing it for everyone in front of us. And what was cool about the Grey Griffin line was that there was a girl ahead of us who was dressed up as someone from Avatar. She was really nice to talk to. We had a good balance of, like, Teresa got to talk to her a bit, Megan a bit, and then I got to talk to her for a bit, and that gave Teresa and Megan a chance to talk, because this was the first day that they had ever met. And overall, I really love being able to talk to cosplayers at ComicCon, because you can tell that they are legitimately passionate about what it is that they're cosplaying as, because I went to a video game swing around, I think, 2013, 2014, and I was the only person there. Okay, maybe there was one other, but I was like one of the only people there who was actually into video games. There were so many impressive costumes, and I asked, oh cool, what do you like about that game? And the person would say, I don't know, I'm just here because I was told to dress up. But these people were legitimately into it, and she was fangirling like crazy, which was great. And she was also really concerned about modesty, which when you're at Comic-Con, that can be a hit or miss affair. She was like, whatever I dress up as, I want to make sure I'm not showing any cleavage. Which that's also my rule of thumb going forward is, If you're wondering why I didn't include a picture in, there's either too much cleavage or it's too tight around the pelvic region. Then we met John Ratzenberger, who played Ham in Toy Story, and first he played P.T. Flea in A Bug's Life, but he's been in every single Pixar movie to date. And so my sister and I, when we watch Pixar, we like to try to do a John Ratzenberger sighting, because again, he's in all of them, and he has a pretty distinct voice. He came across as though he was very shy, possibly not wanted to be there, but at the same time he cared very much about people's practical well-being. So for instance, he talked about how he used to be a carpenter before he was an actor, and when he would work on film sets, he would always get along with the carpenters really well. And then he lamented how young people nowadays don't know how to build houses well enough. He said, if only they knew that, because that's such a good life skill to get by in life. So then he asked the three of us what we did for a living, and he had some kind of practical compliment to give, I think, all three of us. Because he was like, oh yeah, with that kind of job you can make an honest living. For me in particular, because I work as a janitor, he said two things that really made my day. First, he said, well, with your kind of job, you're making sure that people are healthier because you're cleaning up all the germs. And then after that, he said, with the kind of step-by-step skill set you have, you could potentially get a job anywhere in the world. So I'm glad that you have that versatility. Again, not verbatim, but we weren't allowed to record these conversations, but that's more or less the gist of what he said. And it wasn't until the very end that Teresa said, oh, hey, you did a good job on the movies. And he's like, oh, thanks. He was by far the most reserved and shy of all the people there, but at the very least he tried to inject some dry humor into there so that he didn't come across as a total boring droner. Like when Teresa said, hey, we're here to meet you, he's like, why? In this kind of sly voice. And when I said, keep up the Pixar streak going, he gave me a little wink, and that was the last thing that I heard from him. Skipping forward quite a bit to Saturday, we met Giancarlo Esposito, who played the Mirror. And well, I won't say who else he played in Once Upon a Time, because that's a bit of a spoiler. But yes, he played the Mirror. And he came across as though his biggest priority was that he wanted to make sure that every person got what they paid for. So like people can pay for a selfie or an autograph or just say hi. And the line was huge. Like it was even going past the borders of what the line allowed. So thankfully Megan had a VIP pass that allowed us to only wait for I think 2 or 3 people ahead of us. And he did answer our questions, but like he didn't really look at me at all because Megan had paid for an autograph. So he was focused on making sure that he got that right. But he was at the very least curt, and he came across like he was more emotionally vulnerable than how he appeared in Once Upon a Time. So for example, he, humbly said thank you for when I thanked him for one of his performances in Once Upon a Time, and then I said, oh well, I was at, I won't say whose, but there was another actor that I saw from Once Upon a Time, and I said, this actor said that he/she, again, I don't want to spoil it, said some nice things about you, and he said, oh, I love this person is so great. You'll see who it is in a moment. I'll stop being cryptic pretty soon. So that was great that we got 2 Once Upon a Time actors at the same convention. Okay, you've been waiting long enough, so let's stop stalling and get to who were the 2 really special celebrities that I met. The reason I call them special is that I was so excited to see these 2 that I actually paid for selfies with them. And since ComicCon was generous with who was in the selfie, Megan and Teresa also got to get in, both of them. So we met Jen Taylor, who was the former voice of Peach, Toad, and Toadette in the Mario games, and she came across as this very gentle sweetheart, for lack of a better word. Oh, before I forget, I got a little bit too ahead of myself. We met Karen Allen, who was in the Indiana Jones movies, and she came across as kind of like a doting grandma, for lack of a better word. She was really excited to see us. She was talking about how much she really got along with Harrison Ford during the movies, and she cleared up a couple of the suspicions about how a lot of people say that he's gruff and unfriendly, and she's like, well, he is gruff, but not in a bad way. And so she was trying to balance out the traits that people didn't like about him and justify how he was actually a really nice person deep down underneath all of the gruffness. Now we're talking about Jen Taylor. So for her, she came across as a very, for lack of a better word, warm and empathetic person. The way she talked seemed like she was genuinely happy about us being happy to see her. So for example, she would say a lot of things like, "It was so good to meet you. Thank you so much." And "Yeah, it was a pleasure." Now, she didn't talk exactly like Peach. She had more of a traditional older woman voice, but like the more she talked, the more I could see, like, I can see bits and pieces of that being Peach's voice. Now, I asked her how she came to the conclusion of how she reached however Peach ended up sounding. And she said that the goal was that she wanted to sound a little bit like Leslie Swan, but not identical, because Leslie Swan, who played Peach in Mario 64, Mario 64 DS, and Super Paper Mario, was not a professional voice actress. And apparently it was kind of in desperation that they got her the role at all. And she originally wasn't going to return, but they convinced her to show up 2 more times for Mario 64 DS and Super Paper Mario. So Jen was allowed to be more flexible with how she interpreted the character. And for Toad, they just told her basic instructions. She gave a couple of different voice samples and they said, okay. And apparently she auditioned for Toad before she got the role of Peach. So that was a cool little detail. And then we met Jennifer Morrison, who played Emma Swan in Once Upon a Time. All 3 of us were geeking out about meeting her because she was the one actress that all of us knew. And she is very, very different from Emma Swan. She was extremely polite, was like very expressive with how, like, I was telling her how Emma Swan really helped get me out of depression. And she kept saying things like, "Oh, that's so sweet. I'm glad I could provide that for you." And I asked, like, if people were ever intimidated to meet her, and thankfully she said no, because she said, "No, I'm quite different from Emma Swan." And what was interesting about her was that I figured that she'd probably be nicer than Emma, because that's not a very high bar to cross. But how much nicer and more outgoing than Emma was what really shocked me, because not only did we get a picture with her, and I got to say, like, "Hey, I was supposed to meet you in 2020, but it got canceled," and she was so happy that it came full circle. When I told her her performance helped get me out of depression, she said, "It's good that you have a character that you can relate to." And then she said, "You're the one who saved yourself. Don't credit me with that." And she gave each of us a hug, which was great. We also got a photo op with her. We also got to go to a panel with her, so I ended up seeing her 3 times in the span of 2 days. And in the panel, that was where I really got the impression that she was most likely an extroverted personality type, because she came across as extremely willing to engage with her fans and the people around her. And with what I've been studying about the interaction styles, she is what you would call a progression type. I'm not going to get into it right now because this is not a Myers-Briggs video, but she used the word the progress or the process so much that I almost laughed, because she kept talking about step by step, where I was like, if she was an introverted type, she would probably talk more about the outcome. But again, that's another discussion. But boy, was she initiating. The first person that talked was a child, and the moderator had said beforehand, like, okay, make sure that you know the question ahead of time. Don't do a multi-part question because we don't want her to get confused. Don't ask for hugs, because if you do that, then everyone's going to want a hug and it's going to go behind schedule. So the first kid that came up was very polite, extremely straight to the point, asked her question, and expected an answer. But after Jennifer answered the question, she kept asking the kid questions of her own that were unrelated. Like, she would say, "How old are you? Is your mommy here? What's your mommy's name? Are you enjoying ComicCon?" And just like this very motherly, caring tone of voice. And she would like react with all the appropriate expressions when people would say something. Like, one person came and was like, "Hey, I knew someone that you're related to." She's like, "No way, that's so cool." And came across as just a very easygoing and friendly person, which is not how Emma is at all. I really appreciated hearing all the behind the scenes about like how she prepared for Once Upon a Time. And I won't say exactly what she said, but it was extremely interesting hearing like the amount of research that she did and how her research directly impacted her work. So that'll be a subject for another day in my Myers-Briggs videos. So overall, Comic-Con was a blast. I loved being able to get all of the cosplays. I loved being able to meet all the celebrities. Even shy John Ratzenberger still managed to make me feel validated for being a janitor when most other people would say that's not good enough for your talent set, Paul. You'd be better off doing something better. But you know what? The world needs janitors, and I'm willing to do it. And John was willing to affirm me for that. Whether the actor or actress was shy, like John, or super outgoing, like Griffin, they all made us feel like they, in some way, validated us being there, which I really appreciated. What I didn't like about ComicCon was that on Saturday, it was insanely crowded. Like, so crowded that we almost got separated a few times. It was almost like being back at NCYC. For some of the pictures that are more close up that you see, especially somewhere in there you'll see a picture of me with a girl dressed up as Futaba from Persona 5. We were practically squeezed in when we were taking that picture, so I'm surprised we got it as good quality as we did. Every single cosplay picture was worth it. Every single art exhibit we visited was worth it. Speaking of which, there's one particular vendor who was feeling particularly talkative, and at one point he just said, "Guys, ask me whatever you want." No one took it up, so I said, "Alright, I'll ask you something. What video games have you played?" And he said, "I used to play Resident Evil, but as soon as they moved away from zombies and started getting into more aliens, then I gave up." It was really great that all of the vendors were friendly. All of them were super outgoing and saying, like, "Yeah, you can take some pictures, show it to your friends, look around," but he was by far the most. And he got a sale out of it because Teresa said, "Yeah, I'm going to buy something." Also, I would recommend if you ever go to a convention, bring good walking shoes because my feet were killing me by the end of that trip. Thankfully, I put up with it a bit, but there were quite a few times where I said, "I think I'm ready to go," and Teresa was like, "Oh, I'm just getting started. I want to see some more stuff." So I'm like, okay, I can put up with it a bit longer. But thankfully, once it started getting too overwhelming, Megan and I found a nice quiet hallway that we could sit by. So there were places for just about everyone. There was an exhibit where a guy was showing off his lightsaber moves. There were gaming tournaments, arcade machines. The pizza was really good. And overall, it just seemed like it was a geek haven. And that was the best thing I could ask for, especially because Teresa treated me to this as a belated birthday gift. So if you're listening to this, thank you, Teresa, for providing, so far, probably the highlight of my year. Of course, there's still meeting Isabel, which will probably overtake this, but for now, this was amazing, and I'm really looking forward to whatever Comic-Con has in store in 2025 and beyond, God willing. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about the video. Let me know which of the cosplays was your favorite, which of the actors were you the most excited to hear about. Were there any where their personalities really surprised you? Or were there some where you were like, yeah, that's pretty much what I expected. Either way, just be as talkative as you want, because Griffin certainly was, and I'm hoping there will be one of you like that. But even if you're as shy as John Ratzenberger, you still have your place on my channel. So with that, you all have a wonderful day, and remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!